Today on Let's Talk About the Built Environment podcast, I'm very happy to be joined by Tom Wilmot, Joint MD of Capital&Centric. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Jonathan.
So, first and foremost, just to look into where you grew up and what first led you to a career in the built environment.
Yeah, so I was born in Derbyshire, grew up in Lincolnshire. So I was doing my A-levels. A lot of my friends were going to university. I think I was always somebody who I think the system, was never supposed to go to university according to the system. And the reason I say that is I'm from a relatively working class background, and I was never particularly academic at school. So I was never really expecting to go to university. And it kind of dawned on me subconsciously. I was watching a lot of those property programs like Escape to the Country, Homes Under the Hammer. It kind of got me thinking about the built environment and property and construction. And from there, I kind of started researching property courses, and I learned that there was a whole industry and there was a profession. There was a governing body called the RICS, and I needed to be on a course that was accredited by the RICS, and that was kind of how I got into
Daytime telly then is to blame.
Basically, yeah.
That's interesting.
Lucky I wasn't watching Loose Women really, or Jeremy Kyle. So I ended up doing a degree in urban land economics at Sheffield Hallam University. Yeah, it was a general practice surveying degree with a few economics modules. And when I got on that course, I found there was a lot of people on that course that were there because either their dad was a surveyor or their uncle was a surveyor. As you know, Jonathan, our sector has never been the most diverse, and I think historically surveying's been referred to as a bit of an old boys club, and there's almost generations of surveyors. And I found that on my course there was a lot of people that were there not because they really were passionate about working in the built environment, but because somebody had told them you should go and do this. It's a respected career, and there'll be a well paid job at the end of it. Whereas I was there because I was really interested in property and real estate, and I was passionate about it. I don't think my parents knew what I was doing. I was very interested in what I did. I did really well on the course. I got a first class honours degree.
I saw that, yeah.
I actually got the top mark on the degree prep.
All right.
I wasn't a teacher's pet. I was just very interested in the course.
When I went to college, I did H&D, and then I did a degree, and I think I always wanted a job, but I think I found out incrementally about the RICS and the APC, etc. But I guess that both sides helped you with, obviously, like I say, choosing the right degree, a accredited degree, etc. So you've got a first, obviously you're hot in the market. So what was next after that?
So I, as part of my course, there was an opportunity to extend it from 3 to 4 years and do a year in industry. So I took that opportunity and I went to work for a company called Sanderson Weatherall in Leeds, and had a great year, and I was really, really grateful for that opportunity. That was kind of 2008, 2009. So the credit crunch was just happened. We're in quite a deep recession. There was a lot of people being laid off, a lot of young people were losing their jobs. So I really appreciate the opportunity and Sanderson Weatherall not pulling their placement program, their internship program, and that was a great year for me because I learned a lot, not just about property and surveying, about the world of working, and a lot of kind of soft skills came with that, and I had a great year, and I think probably the one thing I took away from that year was, as much as I enjoyed, I kind of sat in a valuation department for half the year, and I was in a kind of corporate real estate department for the other half, where I had some kind of experience in disposals. But what I took away from that is I kind of learned that when I did get into the industry following graduation, I kind of wanted to work for a property company or a developer and kind of be doing it rather than be in a consultancy capacity advising on it. That was kind of what I really took away. So I went back to university, finished my degree. I went backpacking around South America for 6 months, took a bit of time out, came back, ready to start work. And I wanted a job there and then. And the problem was the milk round events were just opening again for the intake for the following September, but I didn't want to wait kind of 10 months for a job. So I contacted the university, and I had some good relationships with lots of the lecturers. So I basically put the feelers out and just said, look, if you're aware of any employment opportunities, please kind of put my name forward. And through one of those connections, there was a Sheffield Hallam alumni who was working for a company called the Mansion Group, who were a prop co in the purpose-built student accommodation sector. And they said, yeah, we're looking for a graduate. So I interviewed for that job, and unfortunately I got it. And that was kind of my first proper job. So that was what brought me to Manchester. And what Mansion were doing, they'd set up a couple of their own funds. So they had a fund listed on the Channel Islands Stock Exchange, and they also had the Pay for Property Authorised Investment Fund. And their kind of business plan really was buying existing student accommodation blocks with some kind of value add potential. And they were flipping them into a fund and kind of managing them for the fund. And it was a niche sector to get into, but what was great for me was that sector was relatively recession-proof, PBSA. So there was a lot of my mates at the time who'd managed to get jobs were working for the big consultancies, probably doing sales brochures to let 2,000 square foot retail units. I was kind of thrown in the deep end doing 15, 20 million quid acquisitions, probably within 12 months of starting at the Mansion Group. So because they were raising so much money and they were so acquisitive, I was getting a lot of transactional experience, a lot of funding experience, and that was what I think gave me a bit of a head start initially. Okay,
and I know looking at your background, you ended up doing work in Europe as well, which is super interesting.
Yeah, so I'd been at Mansion for almost 3 years, and I thought, I need to get out of this sector. It's quite niche. I'd felt like I'd learned everything there was to know about student accommodation. I thought I should probably try and move out of an alternative sector and try and get something a bit more mainstream. Around at that time, I got headhunted by a company called the Crosslane Group. And I said to them, who are also a PBSA developer, investor, and I said, I'm actually trying to get out of this sector. And they said, well, here is out. And what they were doing was, it was purpose-built student accommodation, but they were expanding into Europe. And I think that opportunity kind of seduced me into staying in the sector for a few more years. So, I think at the time I was probably 26, 27. I was jumping on a flight every week in my suit, going to MIPIM at the age of mid-20s. And it was great. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. It was absolutely fantastic, brilliant experience. But after about 3 years, all those feelings I had at Mansion came flooding back to me, and it was kind of worse at this point because I thought I've gone from something that's quite niche to something that's very niche, because I didn't really think that job existed. Certainly in Manchester, probably existed in London. So I kind of thought, if I'm not careful, I'll end up being pigeonholed, and I'll reach a bit of a glass ceiling. And also the novelty of jetting around had worn off. So I did 3 years at Crosslane, and then I decided to look for another job and ended up I moved to work for a large Scottish construction company called the Robertson Group.
They're colossal, aren't they?
Yeah, they're very big in Scotland. They probably turn over 700-800 million quid a year. And I joined their property team. So their kind of business model in their property team was, it was a self-sufficient division within the business, a development company really, but they contracted with their in-house contractor. So it wasn't just about development. It was creating work for the contracting business. And there, ironically, the first scheme I did there was a PBSA scheme in Lancaster. So obviously it's a difficult sector to avoid, purpose-built student accommodation. But I also ended up getting quite a lot of hotel experience and a lot of BTR experience, and I learned a lot. And I think I was there for 2 years, and I probably learned more in that 2 years than I had. And after about 2 years, I was contacted by Tim Heatley at Capital&Centric, and I went to meet Tim, had a good chat, subsequently met Adam Higgins, the other co-founder, and had a good conversation. And yeah, that was about 6.5 years ago, and the rest is history, really.
So, great to come to Capital&Centric, but something struck me then when we were chatting was that you've seemed to have managed your career quite well. So when you were at the Robertson Group, where were you hoping to get to next?
I didn't necessarily go to Robertson as a stepping stone. I think one thing I've always done in my career is whenever my learning, my personal development began to decelerate, I would always look for a move. Not necessarily in a different business. Sometimes it was a different role within the business. But I kind of thought, whenever I'm young, it's important to kind of maintain the same velocity of kind of learning and personal development. And that's that's something I've managed to maintain throughout my career. And I think, if I'm honest, I wasn't looking for a move away from Robertson, but when Tim and Adam contacted me, Capital&Centric having the large brand that they do, and being the opportunities to be involved in really exciting projects, I guess was what tempted me to move really.
you.